At 35 years old, Daniel Brooks had never negotiated his salary. Not once. Every job offer he had received in the past 12 years, he simply said, "Sounds good," because he was grateful. Grateful to have a job. Grateful to be considered. Grateful not to risk the offer. He worked as an operations supervisor in Atlanta. Salary, $63,000 per year. Decent. Stable. But when he found out a colleague with the same responsibilities was earning $74,000, something shifted. Same role, same company, same workload. $11,000 difference. That's almost $900 per month before tax. For years, Daniel believed income was based purely on performance. But that day he learned something uncomfortable. Income is also based on negotiation. And he had never played that game. That night, he opened his email and searched old offer letters. Every one of them had something in common. No counteroffer, no discussion, no pushback. He accepted the first number every time. Not because it was fair, because he was afraid. Afraid of losing the opportunity, afraid of sounding difficult, afraid of seeming ungrateful. But here's what he realized. Companies expect negotiation. Silence benefits them. Daniel wasn't underperforming, he was under-asserting. That difference cost him tens of thousands over the years. He did a simple calculation. If he had negotiated just $5,000 more per job transition, across 3 job changes, that's $15,000 extra annually. Over 10 years, $150,000, not counting investment growth. That number made his stomach turn. He hadn't been underpaid, he had undervalued himself. And that realization hurt, because it meant the ceiling wasn't imposed, it was accepted. A few weeks later, his annual review approached. Normally, Daniel would walk in, listen to feedback, accept the raise, usually 3%, and leave. But not this time. This time, he prepared, not emotionally, strategically. He spent 2 weeks documenting measurable impact. Reduced warehouse processing time by 17%, cut overtime costs by 12%, implemented scheduling system that saved 8 labor hours weekly, managed team turnover below industry average, numbers, not effort, impact. He researched market salaries for similar roles in Atlanta. Range, $70,000 to $78,000. He was at $63,000. That gap wasn't small, it was structural. For the first time, Daniel saw salary not as appreciation, but as positioning. If you don't position yourself correctly, you get priced lower. And pricing determines trajectory. The morning of the review, he felt nervous. Not because he lacked proof, because he was changing identity. He wasn't the grateful employee anymore. He was a value-driven professional. When his manager finished performance feedback, mostly positive, Daniel did something he had never done before. He didn't say, "Thank you," and stand up. He said calmly, "I appreciate the feedback. Based on the operational improvements I've led this year and current market rates for similar roles, I'd like to discuss aligning my compensation closer to $75,000. Silence. His heart raced. But he didn't fill the silence. He let it sit. Because confidence isn't loud, it's steady. His manager leaned back. "I wasn't expecting that number." Daniel responded calmly. "I understand. But the data shows measurable cost savings and efficiency gains that exceed my current compensation alignment. I'm committed to continuing that growth." No emotion. No pleading. Just logic. That meeting didn't end with a yes. It ended with, "Let me speak with upper management." Daniel walked out unsure, but proud. because for the first time in 12 years, he had advocated for himself, and that alone changed something internally. Even if the raise didn't happen, he had raised his standard. But the story doesn't end there. Daniel didn't hear back for 3 days. No update, no confirmation, no rejection. Those 3 days felt longer than the entire year. Old Daniel would have regretted speaking up. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I damaged my reputation. But something was different now. Even if the answer was no, he had changed. Because once you advocate for your value, you can't go back to silence. On the 4th day, his manager called him into the office. Short conversation, straight to the point. "We reviewed your request. We can't go to $75,000 immediately, but we can adjust your base to $71,000 starting next month, with a performance review in 6 months tied to the remaining increase. From $63,000 to $71,000. An $8,000 raise, just for asking. That's $667 more per month before tax." Daniel did the math later that night. If he invested that $667 monthly into index funds, averaging 8% annual return, over 20 years, that's roughly $395,000. One conversation, nearly $400,000 long-term difference. And that's not counting the higher base for future raises. Because here's what most people miss. Raises compound. If future raises are 3 to 5% annually, they're based on your current salary. Higher base equals higher compounding. If Daniel stayed at 63K and received 4% annual raises, in 5 years, he'd be around 76K. But starting at 71K, 5 years later, that number jumps closer to 86K. Negotiation doesn't just change this year. It changes every year after. That realization shifted his entire mindset. For 12 years, he believed performance alone controlled income. Now he understood positioning matters equally. Performance earns leverage. Negotiation activates it. The following 6 months, Daniel doubled down. He didn't relax because he got a partial win. He delivered even stronger results. Improved inventory turnover efficiency by another 9%. Reduced supply chain delays by 15%. Implemented a cost-tracking dashboard, saving administrative hours weekly. 6 months later, that follow-up review came. This time, he didn't ask nervously. He referenced prior agreement. "Based on our previous discussion and continued performance metrics, I'd like to revisit the alignment towards $75,000. The raise went through. Final base salary, $75,000. From 63K to 75K within 1 year. $12,000 increase, almost 19% growth. And here's the deeper lesson. Daniel didn't become more skilled overnight. He became more assertive. Most employees undervalue negotiation because it feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is profitable. Companies rarely offer maximum budget up front. They offer acceptable minimum. Your willingness to speak determines the ceiling. And here's something even more important. Negotiation builds identity. After that first raise, Daniel stopped seeing himself as lucky to be here. He saw himself as valuable here. That identity changed his posture, changed how he spoke in meetings, changed how he positioned future projects. Confidence backed by numbers is powerful. He didn't turn into an aggressive negotiator. He became a strategic professional. And here's the truth for you. If you've never negotiated your salary, you've likely left tens of thousands on the table. Not because you weren't good, because you were silent. Silence is expensive, but so is comfort. Daniel didn't change industries. He didn't launch a startup. He didn't gamble on crypto. He asked for alignment. and alignment built trajectory. Now, instead of saving $600 a month, he could invest nearly $1,600. That changes net worth dramatically over time. Income growth isn't always about switching careers. Sometimes it's about raising standards, and standards raise ceilings. If you've never negotiated your salary, that's not humility, that's hesitation. Subscribe to Rich Mind Talk, because we don't just talk about earning more, we talk about positioning yourself higher. Your current salary isn't just a number, it's a negotiation.